Finland question: why success stories don't scale. Pick this. It's a Tuesday morning in Helsinki. A 7-year-old walks into her classroom, not to sit in rows, but to gather around her teacher, who's about to start an exploration of water in our world. Over the next few weeks, she'll measure rainfall in maths, write stories about rivers in language arts, learn about water cycles in science, and explore how different cultures celebrate water in social studies. All integrated, all meaningful, all designed around how children actually learn. Finland consistently ranks at the top of global education rankings. Their approach seems obvious and replicable. And before you think this requires massive financial investment, it doesn't. Maria Montessori originally developed her methods for children in Rome's poorest neighborhoods. Integrated phenomenon-based learning actually costs less than our current fragmented systems because it's less complicated than what people actually think. You don't need expensive technology or elaborate facilities to have children explore water cycles through maths, science, and storytelling. You need teachers who understand how learning actually works. So here's the question that should keep every education leader awake at night. If this works so well, is so thoroughly documented, and actually costs less to implement, why isn't everyone doing it? Welcome back to the Bell Rebellion. I'm Esme, and today we're exploring how educational success stories don't scale, and what that reveals about what our systems are actually really designed to do. The Finland model. Let me paint you a picture of what Finland actually does, because it's everything our systems claim to want but actively resist. First, teaching is a highly respected profession requiring a master's degree with emphasis on research-based education. Teachers have deep expertise and the professional autonomy to design curricula tailored to their students' specific needs. This isn't just feel-good policy, it's systematic investment in human capability. Second, they've built their system on equity and equality. All schools are publicly funded. No tracking or streaming is done during the first 9 years. The focus is providing individualized support for every student, with a significant percentage receiving specialized assistance, not sorting children into winners and losers. Third, they prioritize student well-being. School doesn't start until age 7. Shorter days with plenty of breaks for play and outdoor activity. No high-stakes standardized tests during basic education. Instead, teachers conduct continuous formative assessments. This reduces stress and promotes genuine love for learning. And the part that connects to our digital literacy discussion from last episode, phenomenon-based learning. They integrate subjects through multidisciplinary modules. A unit on the European Union integrates history, geography, economics, and languages. Students get holistic, coherent understanding rather than fragmented subject silos. This isn't experimental education. This is a proven model with decades of evidence and international recognition. So why isn't everyone doing what Finland does? Finland's model creates critical thinkers, not compliant consumers. And the global economy depends on maintaining consumer populations.
Say, let's pretend this grain is a puny little ant.
Did that hurt?
Nope.
Well, how about this one? Are you kidding? Well, how about this?
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?
That clip captures something profound about power structures. The grasshoppers need the ants to believe they're helpless, even though the ants outnumber them 100 to 1. Educational systems serve the same function. not developing human potential, but maintaining hierarchical control. Let me show you how this plays out in South Africa, because the contradictions are so stark, it's almost comical. In July 2025, the Department of Basic Education announced that we can't make coding and robotics compulsory. We have limited resources, literacy first. Then, in October 2025, the same department launches the ultimate coding and robotics competition for all Gauteng learners. Do you notice the pattern? They can fund the spectacle, but not the substance. They can create impressive looking initiatives that generate great photo opportunities while avoiding the systematic changes that would actually address educational inequality. And the really insidious part is they're using a literacy crisis they haven't solved in 15 years to justify not preparing children for economic competitiveness. When you can fund robotics competitions but claim you can't fund systematic digital literacy education, who are you really serving? And this is what I call manufactured urgency through maintained dysfunction. They need the literacy crisis to stay unsolved so they can keep using it as an excuse for not doing the harder work of genuine educational transformation. In our last episode, I promised to explore what genuine digital literacy looks like, because this connects directly to why Finland's integrated approach works while our fragmented systems fail. Digital literacy isn't about typing skills or using apps. It's an umbrella that encompasses critical thinking and evaluation, creativity, collaboration, cultural and social understanding, practical and functional skills, as well as information curation and e-safety. These are the skills that create independent thinkers rather than passive consumers. Let me contrast what we're doing with what we could be doing. Our current reality is this. Children go to computer classes where they use apps like Purple Mash to do typing exercises and basic games. These activities are completely disconnected from other learning. Mathematics happens on paper in one room, and then they go to another room to do mathematics games on screens. No integration, no meaningful connection. And this is what integrated digital literacy would look like. When I was teaching grade 2, I created a lesson that wove together multiple subjects around a single meaningful challenge. I presented my students with a fake news article, complete with spelling mistakes and geographic inconsistencies. First, we discussed what fake news is, why it's harmful, and why we need to recognize it. Then I gave them a detective framework to analyze the article. They had to read the text, developing their literacy skills, decoding words, and identifying spelling errors. They analyzed the accompanying photograph. Does this look like a real South African town or somewhere else? If the article claims an alien invasion happened in Johannesburg, why is there an ocean in the background? They were developing critical thinking, practicing their literacy skills, learning geography, understanding media literacy, and building analytical frameworks, all integrated, all meaningful, and all appropriate for 7 to 8-year-olds. Finally, they created their own news article about what they thought might have actually happened. Pure creativity emerging from critical analysis. This hit every component of genuine digital literacy in a way that felt natural and engaging. The children loved it. You can tell when kids are genuinely engaged versus just complying. And this kind of integrated learning lights them up. But let me show you the difference between genuine integration and what systems call integration. I recently saw a grade 3 assessment rubric for what was labeled an integrated project. Students were required to make a poster demonstrating 7 separate skills: healthy eating knowledge, money skills, creative product design, food journal writing, understanding food choices, teamwork, and presentation. Each skill was separately weighted and assessed. 15% for this, 10% for that, 15% for the other thing. This isn't integration. This is fragmentation disguised as connection. They took what could have been a beautiful exploration of community food systems and turned it into a checklist where children make displays that tick boxes across subjects. Compare that to genuine integration. When I designed a multi-week project for my grade 3 students, We would spend 4 to 5 weeks researching real community problems like sustainable energy solutions for their own neighborhoods. They'd conduct SWOT analysis, interview community members, research renewable energy options, create action plans, and then present solutions to real stakeholders. Or they'd spend 5 weeks becoming paleontologists, researching geological time periods, creating educational board games that taught others about dinosaur habits and extinction events, all while developing research skills, scientific understanding, and creative problem solving. These weren't separate subjects artificially combined. They were authentic investigations that naturally required scientific thinking, mathematical analysis, literacy skills, research capabilities, and creative expression. But the really devastating part, when I did projects like this, my colleagues' responses was on a spectrum, anywhere from I don't get it, I don't understand, how will we mark the kids? There was no curiosity about the methodology, no interest in the collaboration, no questions about how to integrate their own teaching. And during my digital literacy classes, they were just relieved that somebody else was taking their kids for a half an hour or an hour. This reveals how the system has conditioned teachers to think of themselves as subject deliverers rather than holistic educators. They don't see connections between disciplines because they've been trained to think in silos. Compare this to Finland, where teachers would absolutely be curious about and engaged with integrated approaches. They see themselves as collaborative professionals developing the whole child, not as isolated subject specialists protecting their territory. Now let's examine how this fragmentation is built into the system itself, because what looks like educational failure is actually systematic success at creating the outcomes the system actually wants. The new Bella regulations in South Africa provide a perfect example. The policy mandates 30 children per teacher in grade R, with 7 square meters designed as teaching space. Let's do the maths. 30 children divided by 1 teacher equals 2 minutes of individual attention per child per hour. Now, if you're still with me, that means on any given 6-hour school day, that is 12 minutes of individualized learning time in a school day. That's not education, that's warehousing. But it gets worse. 7 square meters for teaching space reveals that policymakers are still operating from a factory model where the teacher stands in front and delivers content to the passive recipients. This approach has been debunked by decades of early childhood development research. These regulations will inevitably force compliance-based teaching methods because they're the only way to manage 30 young children in a confined space. We're systematically setting up both educators and children to fail. This isn't accidental policy failure. This is intentional design. The system creates teacher training programs that prepare educators for educational environments that existed decades ago. 1 semester of multicultural education to navigate a nation with 12 official languages, 1 semester covering how to use a smartboard with no pedagogical framework or purpose for the technology. Teachers graduate unable to speak additional languages they may need to teach, with reading instructions so inadequate that new graduates need peer tutoring to teach basic literacy. This creates what I call the missing middle. In educational options, we get track 1 with your premium social reproduction. That's exclusive and expensive. We get track 2, efficiency optimized delivery. That's scalable but superficial. But track 3, genuine educational innovation that uses technology to enhance learning while serving diverse populations effectively, barely exists. And it can't exist at scale because the human infrastructure required to create it doesn't exist. Even well-intentioned schools can't deliver integrated, innovative education without teachers trained to think systematically and work collaboratively. Now, here's where the systematic nature of this dysfunction becomes crystal clear. The very people who profit from our fragmented, technology-dependent educational systems give their own children something completely different. Mark Zuckerberg sends his daughters to tech-free Montessori schools, while his company pushes surveillance technology and addictive platforms into public schools worldwide. Steve Jobs famously banned iPhones and iPads in his home, prioritizing books and real-world experiences for his children, while revolutionizing educational technology for everyone else's kids. Jeff Bezos funds Montessori-inspired preschools for his own children, while building efficiency-optimized delivery systems for other people's children. Well, what do these billionaires give their own kids? Small class sizes, like Finland. Individualized attention, like Finland. Integrated learning experiences, like Finland. Critical thinking focus, like, you got it, Finland. And no screens until appropriate developmental stages. What do they push on everyone else's children? Surveillance technology in classrooms, AI tutoring systems that replace human interaction, digital citizenship programs that are actually compliance training, efficiency-optimized delivery systems that prioritize cost reduction over learning outcomes. This isn't accidental hypocrisy. It's strategic maintenance of educational inequality. They understand exactly what kind of education develops independent critical thinkers, and they make sure their children get it while ensuring everyone else's children get something fundamentally different. The uncomfortable truth that we need to face is our educational systems are not broken. They're working exactly as they were designed to. The system isn't failing to create critical thinkers, it's succeeding at creating compliant consumers. It's not failing to develop human potential, it's succeeding at sorting people into predetermined categories. What I call social extraction keeps the system functioning. Privileged people aren't quite ready to give up their social standing, even when they recognize the system's dysfunction. Parents fight to get their children into the best schools. This means the most selective and exclusive, without realizing they're supporting a sorting system that requires most children to be supported into lesser categories. Teachers implement scripted curricula because they've been convinced this is professional, not realizing they're systematically de-skilling themselves. Administrators resist innovation because genuine educational transformation threatens the institutional structures that maintain their power. This creates what I call the complicity problem. The system has made us all participants in our own oppression. We accept fragmented learning because integrated approaches feel too difficult. We accept surveillance technology because it's presented as innovation. We accept sorting and ranking because we've been conditioned to believe scarcity is natural rather than manufactured. The cognitive rewiring required to change this would take generations because people have been conditioned to believe that competition is more important than collaboration. Individual success matters more than collective well-being, and authority should be obeyed rather than questioned. When people hear about Finland's approach, they often dismiss it as unrealistic or socialist, not because the evidence doesn't support it, but because accepting it would require questioning everything they've been taught about how education and society should function. So how do we wake people up without triggering the defense conditioning that makes them double down on systems that oppress them? It starts with asking better questions. Every time you encounter educational innovation that works but doesn't scale, ask yourself, who benefits from keeping it exclusive? When you hear about resource constraints preventing educational improvements, ask, how are resources actually being allocated? And what does that reveal about the real priorities? When you see technology being introduced in classrooms, ask, is this enhancing human capability or replacing human connection? Is this developing critical thinking or manufacturing compliance? Finland holds up a mirror that shows us what's possible when educational systems are designed around how children actually learn, rather than how institutions want to control them. The fact that this mirror is so consistently ignored reveals that our systems are achieving exactly what they're designed to achieve. The bell doesn't have to control us, but recognizing how it does control us is the first step toward designing something better. Next time on The Bell Rebellion, we'll explore how artificial intelligence is being used to perfect the sorting machine and what genuine technological sovereignty would actually look like for learners and educators. Because understanding the problem is only the beginning. Building the solution requires us to think beyond the system that created the problems in the first place. This has been The Bell Rebellion. I'm Esme. Thank you for questioning, for challenging, and for refusing to accept that educational dysfunction is inevitable. Next time, remember, when success stories don't scale, it's not because they can't, it's because someone benefits from making sure that they don't. Keep rebelling. The end.